everybody. Welcome to My Favorite Shitty Movie. We are back. Another week, another great film. 1986's Cobra, starring Sylvester Stallone in a screenplay he also wrote. Perhaps not on the level as Rocky, but what could be. Excited to talk about this one. As we know, my partner in crime, Todd, loves bad action films, as do I. And this one absolutely qualifies. It is such a righteous relic of Reagan-era America. 1986 was a great year, I would argue, for movies. I mean, I'm obviously biased. I think Aliens is the best movie, but you also had, Ferris Bueller, you had Platoon comes out, wins Best Picture, but you had a really fun one. And this Sylvester Stallone picture we're going to talk about tonight. We agreed at the top of the show and behind the scenes, the green room, that really Sylvester Stallone wanted to be Dirty Harry. He really wanted to be Clint Eastwood. And so a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight is just his unabashed desire to be the tough guy, and his voice is like this. And, there's scenes that we're going to see. There's no, cart on the side of a street that is safe in this film. There is no product placement. What's odd is there's a lot of shout outs to Pepsi. And just when you think, how much did Pepsi pay? Then there's a Coke shout out. I mean, they don't discriminate. It was a time. Very, very excited about this. Also, our special guest tonight is somebody we went to high school together. So we've been like nerds living on movies from this era. So I'm really glad that he's going to come up. I'll introduce him in a little bit. But before I get too far into this, I want to bring up my co-captain in Mayhem. You know him as Todd Anderson. Tonight he's playing the role of Marion Anderson. Bring yourself up into the show, Todd.
Of course I'm Marion.
Marion, which of course is for those people who for some reason don't have Cobra memorized. The punchline runner throughout is that, his real first name is Marion.
Yeah. At the end, he said when someone calls him Marion, he goes, catchy name, huh?
Of course, what's really funny, if you want to be a macho shithead, of course, John Wayne's first name was Marion. So maybe he was doing a wink to John Wayne. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. The John Wayne gave to Clint Eastwood, and then he's trying to take the torch from Clint Eastwood. But the thing is he didn't quite pry it out of Clint Eastwood's hands.
He's a little short to be a stormtrooper, I think. I'm not sure I have ever quite bought Mr. Stallone as the deputy.
This movie has my favorite piece of action hero character development ever.
I'm going to have to process what you said. Say that again. Your character development, did I hear that?
Yeah, it's amazing. I think it's amazing. So the movie, we'll get into this later, but as you know, the movie, there's 13 minutes of movie before there's any character development or any plot in it.
That's true.
And then before we get the plot, we get this character development, and it's him getting home after shooting somebody to death. And then he gets in a fight with some Latino, maybe gang members who are hanging out. He tears a guy's shirt. So you're like, oh, that's one important part of character development. He does not like minorities. And then
he's a white cop with a serious attitude, and he's a cop who can afford to live on the Venice boardwalk. And one of the things I think is so charming about this film is the illusion that you can just pull up and park your car on the boardwalk because you live nearby. It's not you don't.
The only cop I've ever known and cops do well in Los Angeles. That is true.
I don't know about beachfront.
The only cop I've ever known who's lived in a mansion like in the hills was married to a TV star. That's the only way that happened.
Okay.
And obviously, Cobra's living on his own. But then, he tears this guy's shirt unnecessarily, and then he's reading the newspaper, folded in half, just checking out one article, and then he throws it on a grill.
Yeah.
On his way into his apartment. I guess that's where he puts his newspapers, on a grill.
Yeah.
And then he goes in and proceeds to
be weird.
Eat pizza with scissors. He eats pizza with scissors. None of this comes into play at all for the rest of the movie, but okay.
Also, he always wears gloves and his sunglasses inside, and I'm like, it's California, it's hot. Why are you wearing gloves and sunglasses? And he has the match, which we'll get into.
Match always.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's delightful stuff. It comes in under 90 minutes, which is even more delightful.
Which is amazing. And also it reteams him, right, with George, was it Kasamotos, who had done Rambo Part 2 with him, which of course was a huge success.
And would go on to do
Tombstone.
Yeah.
Which we love. Speaking of good character development and all the boys.
Maybe screenplays matter. I don't know.
Maybe they matter. I don't know.
I don't know.
All right. I want to bring up Max Mastrangelo to get us out of trouble. A little bit about this. As mentioned, he is a native Orange County person, just like me. He's been a professional actor since the age of 22. After a 15-year hiatus, he's taken to direct and produce educational theater. He's thrilled to be acting again. And he's been hosting the Cinemaxers film podcast for the past 13 years, which is like so crazy and such a big deal. He was doing it before it was cool, y'all. Which goes on the air live every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific time at talkradio.1 or talkradio1.com, and it's available on Apple Podcasts or really wherever you find your podcast. Cinemaxers. Without further ado, I want to bring up my old high school chum / movie geek extraordinaire, Max. Welcome to the program. Thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm here officially. Apologies for the background. I feel like I'm in the zombie squad or what. Right. He does the jobs nobody else wants. Is that how you're a part of the zombie squad, or you do the jobs nobody else wants?
Just arresting people? Isn't that what all cops do? I don't know.
You also kind of remind me of Cleavon Little in Vanishing Point with that whole setup.
Yeah.
Todd, I love what that opening moment with him. Not only does he rip the Latino's wife beater off, but he rips the actor's microphone off. Like that wasn't planned. And I used to rewind this over and over again on VHS because I'm like, okay, yeah, either this guy's like undercover and he's bugged,
right?
And I came to no, that's the actor's mic. Like Stallone just probably pulled that shit, and they're like, they couldn't do a retake, or they couldn't do it.
It was improv or planned between the two actors. I don't know, but if it was improv and Stallone ripped that guy's shirt, that guy kept playing that scene, and that's the best performance in the movie then
ever. I'm sure that guy was just terrified to be on the. I mean, we're talking about. This is Stallone at the height. He was the most popular actor in the entire world. There are rumors that people were told not to even look him in the eye, like on the set, let alone on screen. And the shit, Todd, with the pizza, it's almost like Stallone. It's like a bad Uta Hagen exercise. He's like, I'm gonna be natural, you know.
I can only speak from experience. And my stage show, the Film Pigs, we parodied movies on stage, was optioned by Stallone's White Eagle Productions for $1. So I had the chance to be in his office many times. I would only meet him in person much later when I tested for a show he was producing, but I was in his office a lot with his guy. And what I loved is if you went into the bathroom, the posters over the toilet were Stop or My Mom Will Shoot and Rhinestone. Like he had all the posters were represented, but he put certain ones in the bathroom.
Right.
So
and then we overheard his guy like checking his messages, and when Stallone would call in, there was like a voice recognition thing so he could get to his voicemails. So we overheard him calling in for his voicemails, and when he was prompted for the voice recognition thing, he just said, "This is God."
Wow. I mean, what else do you need? Right?
I have to say, like, I have such a weakness for 80s action movies, but particularly 80s action movies. I mean, it's going back into the time machine, right? It's the era of Chuck Norris, it's the era of Sylvester. It's Bruce Willis comes along a little bit later around this time after Die Hard. But we've been doing some of these muscleheads, and there's something we had done Predator, the original Predator, on the show some time ago. And I feel like it's the gayest film ever. Like these guys just need to get a room and whatever. And I feel the same way with Stallone in this one. Like he's so trying.
Top Gun Maverick is the gayest film ever, but you're making a good point.
But it's so funny.
Could those jeans be any tighter? And we talked about his height. I mean, the platforms on those boots are everyone in that. I mean, they're very careful on how they even photograph. You know, they were married at the time, him and Virginia, because she towers over him by 3 feet. Or, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too because I remember.
Isn't that the attraction though? Why would you like marry a lady that tall and not be into being short next to her? I don't get it.
It's right. It could be the right height depending on what you're into, but I do feel like I remember when she came on the scene, and through her relationship with him. But it was like kind of almost scandalous. So any young people watching it might not remember this, but the story goes, she took there's a picture of herself in her birthday suit. I'm sure it was very tasteful, absolutely nude. Left it at the hotel he was staying in. He saw her picture, turned it over, and it had her phone number. And so he called her, and that's how they met. And then I think they did 4 movies, at least in the zone together before. I think she shows up in Creed or something later. But Creed. Yeah, but like in the era in which they were together, the Rocky IV is always my favorite. But like, it's so, and I have to say, look, she's very tall. She's a model. She's a beautiful gal. She's better than she needs to be in this film to be charitable. Like,
it's her best. I think it's her best. I think it's her best performance.
I don't know. Or you think it's better than Red Sonja? I mean, come on now, come on.
Also, I mean, have you guys seen Body Count?
Oh my God, Jesus, that's a throw.
I mean, she's good in that. She's great in that. And she wears multiple outfits. She's always in disguise so she can kill you. I don't know. You might want to check that one out.
But here's the problem with putting someone like Brigitte Nielsen in disguises. Like, she's the supermodel, no one looks like her. So it's like, what are you gonna do? Put a wig on her? I mean, it's like, it's Brigitte Nielsen.
It reminds me of In the Line of Fire, the Clint Eastwood movie with John Malkovich, who's like a master of disguises, but no matter what he wears, he looks exactly like John Malkovich.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the. Well, there's so many things that I think are a genius about. It was the Michael Mann film Collateral with Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise's best performances. But what was cool about that movie was the idea that you saw the suit and the hair, and you didn't process Cruise, which is rare because again, no one's kind of more famous than Tom Cruise, but he actually becomes that character, and then they work in the visual look for that character to like everyone notices the hair and that they can't recognize him, and that was a really interesting, smart plot point in that film. This one. Sly is just I'm strutting around and I'm Clint Light and it's just so over the top. And one of my favorite scenes when they're in the diner and she's basically like trying to figure out if he's single. Like, do you ever have like relationships? And his first question, when a hot chick asks you, he goes, with a woman? I'm like, no. Yeah. What is happening in this moment?
Well, that raises questions about Marion Cobretti, doesn't it? But we're having so much fun already talking about the movie. Max needs to define what a great shitty movie is for him.
Yes,
I need to hear that.
A great shitty movie. It's got to infinitely be watchable. So call me an asshole, but if I come across Jaws: The Revenge on television, I'm watching it till the end, because I'm fascinated. Or Battlefield Earth, I'm watching it till the end.
Yes.
Whereas there's some bad movies that are just. My rule is always just don't bore me,
Yes, Joseph. For those of us listening at home, peak 80s action film scene in this one. Brigitte Nielsen modeling for Sledgehammer, the photographer, with Angel in the City.
That's a lot of references people do not get unless they're us.
But Tracy, he doesn't want her to sleep with him he wants her to do it for her career, right? I got that.
Let's talk about her modeling career just a little bit.
His career.
Like, I don't know what's going on. And the motif with the robots was so fantastic. The synth pop in this, the old-fashioned stunts, I think it all adds to what you're saying, Max. It's so eminently watchable. And I think he's ridiculous in this film. Like, it's like, when like Christian Bale like started off doing that voice as Cancer, and then by the time he ends as the Dark Knight, and then he's Bane. I can't hear him at all. Like, Stallone does this weird voice thing, and we know what he sounds like. So he's doing this.
It's like he wants you have to lean in to kind of, and he I think that the movie has no sense of humor except when he thinks that he's providing it, or
That's right.
Yeah, I don't shop here. The little
I don't shop here.
Yeah,
But
he's
other
the
than
only
that-
one. He's the only one who gets quips and jokes. That's it. He's the guy.
My favorite is, you have the right to remain silent forever.
Which makes it actually very interesting that he turned down Beverly Hills Cop to do this. So it's like he was trying to do both things.
Yeah, really.
It's his ego is present in every moment too. Or it's almost like sometimes I feel now that Kevin Costner suffers from this, or sometimes I feel that when you're watching Costner, whom we all love, or I feel that he takes the women aside and he's like, your inner monologue is that you want to fuck me in every scene. If he's in a scene with a woman, they need to want him. Or
right.
And even in this, there's a scene in the hospital when they first meet Bridget Nielsen. And Renee Santoni, the partner, says, I'm Lieutenant Gonzalez, and that intense-looking gentleman over there.
Yes.
Is Lieutenant. Like, why doesn't he say, and that beautiful-looking man over there is Lieutenant? It's all about just how amazing he is,
And also his gun, like he is prominently. I don't know that that's where I'd be keeping my gun if I were a dude, but like it looks like a toy cap gun with like a sticker of a cobra, because his name is Cobretti. That's apparently the tie-in? It looks like a toy gun. Like he just looks to me so silly. He's like, look at this man in platforms with a toy gun, whispering, "My name's Marion." I'm like, there's so many great things about this character that he wrote for himself.
Right. And ripped off all the Clint Eastwood he could, all the Dirty Harry specifically that he could.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Max, you know the story, Beverly Hills Cop, the script he wrote. Talk to us a little bit about behind the scenes that you know about this.
From what I know is that he was offered Beverly Hills Cop, and of course Stallone has to rewrite everything that he it's part of the I'll do, but I'm going to rewrite it all.
Right.
And it was incredibly, can you imagine in Beverly people with axes and the violence that we get in this film, or were they're like, we're not doing it, man. And they hired Murphy at the last, I think they were 3 weeks away from production, or when they hired Eddie Murphy. So Stallone took this and he takes it to the Cannon Group, who was at the height of their batshit craziness. The Death Wish, those movies were incredibly violent. Because they produced, I think it was just distributed by Warner Brothers, but I think that Cannon produced it.
It's a Cannon film for sure.
It looks like a Cannon film. The lighting in this film is just,
there you go.
I want to say atrocious, but that might not be kind. Yeah. I don't know. It's like
I think it's perfect for the subject matter. The lighting.
That's true in the gutter, but we're trying to do like taxi driver shots of walking and things. It is a really special movie in terms of that.
And I feel like it's one of its last of its, like I said, it's void of any humor unless he's giving it to us.
All the best lines.
But I feel that everything just kind of changed when Lethal Weapon came out a year later, where everything, the buddy cop, that there's humor like in the action, or I think they meant this thing to be drop dead serious. Yeah, I don't think that there's anything light about it at all, or it's almost a horror film too. I remember being kind of scared when I saw this. In the theater.
Arguably, from that stance, it is kind of an effective ripoff of the Dirty Harry movies, I would say, because the tone of the Dirty Harry movies is very much the same. It's very serious, with the exception of the Deadpool. It's very serious. Like you take Sudden Impact, that's a rape revenge film. Death Wish territory. It's not. It's very serious, but every now and then there's a bit, with a farting dog and Clint Eastwood. Like every now and then, Clint Eastwood will be involved in some kind of comedy to lighten it up, because the rest of the movie is Sandra Locke trying to kill all her rapists or her sisters.
Jesus, that movie scared the shit out of me. And Tracy, you're always talking about mom taking you to. My dad would take us to this shit. I was in 6th grade. My sister was like 3, and we're watching.
My dad let me watch Sudden Impact on network television, edited for network television, and still had a long conversation with me about the subject matter.
Yeah.
My dad is a great dad. I'm just saying. So that movie disturbed me as well.
At least he talked. At least he talked to you about it, Todd. I mean, there was no prep.
You got
we would just sit and watch, and no one talked about anything.
Well, it's it's. I was talking to Kim earlier today, and I remember because it was the era of Chuck Norris, and I was kind of going through a Taekwondo thing. I was really into martial arts at the time, and so anytime Chuck Norris came out with something, she would take me, and I just remember her taking me to see Force Vengeance, which opens with such a brutal rape, and then like his best friend like gets his back broken, so he's paralyzed. The woman is really brutalized, and because it's Chuck Norris and he's a Republican who hates women, they really shoot it in all the wrong ways, and then he starts killing people. And I was like, I was so uncomfortable while watching it, and I was like, I don't know if Mom's gonna walk out. The only time Mom ever pulled me out of the movie, and we left. She's like, I'm sorry, I just can't. Is Maximum Overdrive. As soon as the beer can went through the coach's head, she's like, that's it. That's it. This is a drug movie.
For me, that was the moment when I was like, this is my movie.
Yeah, I was like, I had to wait for it to come out so I could rent it because I actually was kind of digging it. Because nothing's scarier than like a green goblin on a Mack truck.
Awesome. Yeah. I had to see that in the theater because of the trailer. Well, it was Stephen King yelling at me.
Oh my God, he's screaming at you. He's like, on this like
cocaine.
Okay.
It was a different. I remember family nights. It's like we're gonna watch Purple Rain as a family. I was 10. My sister was 2.
You're like, Dad, why is he putting the lady in the dumpster?
I watched it during the pandemic. I'm like, how in any way is this appropriate for children?
Totally. I remember being like 9 and they took me to go see 10. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, how is this like, why a grade schooler needs to know about a midlife crisis flick with Dudley Moore getting to like sleep with Bo Derek? I mean,
that movie is crazy. Dudley Moore is a fucking creep.
He's a creeper. He's such a creeper.
When we'd sit at home in the living room, my mom's move was, when I tell you to turn around, you have to turn around her. So like, and she had no idea what was coming her, but if someone's boob flashed, turn around her. And then she'll tell you when to turn back around her.
And did you turn around slowly? Like
slowly. Yeah. Oh, slowly. Yeah.
Time goes by so slowly. Okay, so Max, try as best as you can with this nonsensical narrative. Talk about the opening, or do we?
I do. Why don't I launch? I'll launch Max's breakdown of the narrative with the opening sequence as reenacted by my hand and Hillary's voice as Sylvester Stallone as Cobra.
Oh my God.
In America, there's a burglary every 11 seconds. An armed robbery every 65 seconds. A violent crime every 25 seconds. A murder every 24 minutes. And 250 rapes a day. But being this is a 357 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and will blow your head clean off, you gotta ask yourself one question. Do you feel lucky? Well, do ya, punk?
Dude, I don't even know what you guys are smoking over there, but it's wonderful.
It's almost like that thing could have gone on even longer. I mean, what are these stats? Like I was waiting for 359 puppies are deserted. Like just give us everything.
It's also exactly what Donald Trump is running on. Is that list of nonsense?
So is. I know. Hopefully everyone's pets are okay in spring.
Can we call this genre of film fash action? Is that like can we make that a thing? Fascism, action movies, fash action.
We're the electric company kids. Fash action.
It's almost like you could drive Judge Dredd up to the, he keeps saying, you gotta, there's a whole thing when they're in the car driving to the set, you gotta ask the judge, or we put him in, the judge lets him out, or you gotta ask the judge.
Oh my God. And what I love about Judge Dredd, it's like one of my favorite like movies where he's like, I did not kill those 2 people. So then the rest of the movie, he kills like 1,000 people to prove he didn't kill the 2 people. And I'm like, I'm not sure who's winning. I don't know what Judge Dredd's up to. This movie though is so Reagan era pyrotechnics.
It's in the height, man.
It really is. And I do
Stallone owes his entire stardom to Reagan.
Rocky 4, Rambo 2, this.
All of it's Reagan.
And then it started kind of going, this is almost the peak of Stallone's, and it kind of started going down a little bit till cliffhanger after this. Or Rambo 3
that's a really good point.
Rambo 3 didn't really resonate with, it wasn't the big success that they thought it would be. And then he's like, let me put my hat in the comedy ring with Oscar, Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. Or it wasn't until Cliffhanger that we kind of got the Stallone that everyone wanted back.
Interestingly, though, Rambo 3 is the most politically prophetic movie that Stallone ever made.
Hashtag Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. We've talked about this on the show before, but I think it's worth noting within the context of Cobra that we're talking about this evening is that Stallone starts off as a pretty serious actor, doing things like Fisk and Lords of Flatbush and things like that. And then Rocky comes
after the porn. It's important to remember.
The Italian style.
It's just delightful. Hey, it's not just for girls. So like he gets this career, right? But then he becomes Rocky, and people forget a lot of times, like there's been like 1,000 of them now. But Rocky actually wins by losing because he gets in the ring, and that was seen as a winning formula. It's the bicentennial year, it wins Best Picture, the whole nine. You're like, okay, great. And then he does First Blood, which actually is like quite a good movie, quite an anti-war film, quite a like, what are we doing with
It's the most liberal-minded action movie I can think of.
So good. The Richard Crenna moments are the guy is fabulous. And then you get to Rambo and
Brian Dennehy too, right? Brian Dennehy. That moment where Brian Denny kind of breaks down at the, there's some tears there where he's like, what the fuck have I done? Or, I started all this shit.
And John Rambo has a point, and it's this thing. And then
David Caruso was also in it.
You don't like water sports?
With his glasses. But it's true. And then you get to the second one, and it's full fascism, guns, muscles, not a lot of intellect, perhaps. But but it makes more money.
And we bought into it, Tracy. I remember telling my buddy, we got to go back in there.
Gotta go.
We got to go back in there and get those guys there.
Yeah, no, it was really like they were juicing it. And it's an interesting look, that franchise, because of the number of decades it comes over. Stallone's physical appearance changes so dramatically. There's a lot going on from a moral standpoint, an amoral standpoint, a physical standpoint. But yeah, this one I think is so fun. And as somebody during the pandemic, I went through and I did it was a crazy day. I did all the Death Wishes in one day, and I was like, I love Death Wish 3. That's my favorite. Sorry.
You also watched Death Wish 5, Face of Death?
Oh yeah, I was like, I'm doing this whole thing, and you just see Charlie Bronson get weirder and weirder looking.
The movie that its climax is in like a laundromat, right?
Is it the laundromat?
It's like he's killing gangsters in a
and there's a spin cycles joke. Yes, that's it. You're right. But yeah, it's weird watching this film out of reference point or out of its time, so to speak. But I still think it just works, and I think part of the reason it works, and I'm sorry, Max, we will back you up, and you try to go through when you start off with an axe cult, what's happening in Los Angeles. I don't think we really have axe cults, but what's the setup?
Well, it's does he say, Todd? He says I'm a part of the new world.
The new world.
The new world.
And the clanking of the axes is hysterical. It's an hysterical choice to start a movie with people just
clanking. And there's guys that look a little wimpy. I'm like, is this does it precursor to Fight Club? Like a bunch of loser toxic incels doing this? And I don't know.
They're wimpy. And then you see a few guys in suits.
Yeah.
They look like they just got off work, or
Yeah.
They're everywhere. It's early MAGA. This is early MAGA.
Early MAGA. But then we
clank.
What's going on with the clanking thing till we do what I like to call short bus dog day afternoon opening set piece, right? Instead of a bank or at the King, grocery store. And, they spend a lot of time in the opening credits setting up your bad guy. We know he's bad because he parks a motorcycle in a handicap spot. Like that's a whole sequence. We have filtered, like the sun's behind me and I'm on my motorcycle. Now I park in a handicap space, and then you have this guy who goes in, right? And so you could tell they're trying to copy kind of the Dog Day Afternoon. This is not going to be ever confused with the Sid Lumet film, but it's what's going on. We got snipers on the roof. I'm like, that just does not happen in Los Angeles. They don't come. It's like
Hollywood needs to bring back the Art LaFleur character actor.
He's great.
Yeah,
he's great.
He's so good in everything.
He's
super weird looking, but we don't use dudes like that anymore. We don't do it.
It's a weird thing, but all of this is to really show, I guess Stallone enters the picture, so the gun that probably shouldn't be there, the pants that I hope he can breathe. And I guess he had kids after this, so good for him. Then this is the look he has the entire film, like sunglasses and a matchstick. He goes in, and again, the product placement here is amazing. He even opens
a beer. Yeah.
And he's like, and then he can throw it,
It's also important to note that he keeps his Cobra gun in the front of his pants because he's not worried if it goes off, it will miss. It's fine.
There's nothing undercover about him at all. And I love that he's, there's that moment after something where they said they called a Cobra. Like they've exhausted all other call the Cobra,
There's this crazy guy who works for the police who they call only when they don't know what to do.
Yeah, we have to call this guy. And then he shows up in this vintage car, which we will learn later is tricked out like pre-Fast and the Furious, or I guess after Gone in 60 Seconds, the original.
Awesome 50.
So he's got his nitro, he's got all this stuff going on, but it goes awesome 50. And I'm like, I'm not sure I know what that means.
Well, Tracy, the beating that car, I guess we'll get there, but in that 20-minute chase,
brutal.
I don't think that it surpasses anything except it's all CGI in the Fast and the Furious now.
Right.
It takes a leap off of a 3-story parking structure.
It's fine.
I think, huh? Yeah. And it's all. What about just we're from LA, so we know but also logistically, nothing makes any sense, right?
No.
It's like they're in downtown, then they're on the boardwalk, then they're in San Pedro, or within
it's
seconds,
a tradition that was carried on by the TV series 24.
That's true.
It's what we do. It's how we do LA. It's really easy to get from one part to the other.
Yeah.
It's fast.
And why do they? So we have to keep this woman safe, so let's bring in this other cop that nobody knows, she's like, hey, this is Catherine, she's on the case now, and Sly doesn't ask any questions, or you sure?
Also, from a screenwriting standpoint, it's predictable because of the level I would argue the script is written, but because you telegraph this is part of the problem. She's part of the Axe cult that terrorizes people, because I know that. And then I see her as a cop. If you had held that as a reveal.
She's not the same actress that was in Sudden Impact, right? They're like,
it might be, or
it looks so much like her. I was like, is it the same actress?
Watching, he could probably find it out for us. But But again, it's a weird choice. And again, as a screenwriting choice, why wouldn't you try to make her a mole, make it a plot twist, make it pay off? Because no one's going to expect a woman to have agency in a Stallone film, right? So that could have been cool. But then I think they blow it even more so, because psychologically speaking, now that you've established she's a cop, what's the psychology of her being an axe killer with this muscle guy at night? It doesn't, so there's no attempt to understand that. At least, look, if I'm doing Monster, I understand why Eileen Wuornos has problems with men. I understand the psychology of what she does and why she does it. Not defending it, but there's an attempt to explain why. Here, it's it makes no sense. And women just don't do that.
It's a cult.
It's a certain psychology.
It's a cult. Again, the Axe Gang is MAGA. It's a cult.
They're the Proud Boys of their time.
But also,
you know, and it was like whoever, Ann Coulter, she's whatever.
When they back into the woman
Kelsey
that Bridget Nielsen drives by her, and the
Right.
woman's like, you know, how could you do? Didn't you see me? Have you been drinking? And she said, yes, sir. Like,
Yeah.
when was she a monster?
Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden it's Tim Curry and Legend. They're like, what's happening here?
Well, but also there's a line of dialogue where he's like, do you think you could recognize the tall guy?
Yeah.
And she's like, tall guy? And he's like, yeah, the one that's trying to kill you. And it's like, dude, what is that writing? You like, he got a screenplay Oscar over Chayefsky and Network. I'm like, what is going on? Do the guy who killed you think you could recognize him? I'm like, you know, she's like, she came to the cops, she knows. But yeah, she's just a hoot and a half. But she sees this, and this guy he has a face made to be a bad guy in the 80s, 90s.
Oh my God, he's in so much stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
Wonderful.
I don't know if you guys ever saw the Aaron Spelling produced 1-season vampire soap opera.
Thank you, Jeff.
Called Kindred the Embraced.
Yeah, Kindred was cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he's in that, and like I used to get him confused with Jeff Cobra back in the day. Jeff Cobra, like who was the
First
bad guy in
Power.
the First Power.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
China Beach.
Like,
China Beach.
I got that, and they're both in Kindred the Embraced, so it felt like like the multi-universes were crossing, and I was in danger of getting sucked into a black hole
This
or
is
something.
my favorite though, because when we see him, he has like pantyhose over his head because we're still doing that in '86 apparently.
Well, he's like cutting himself too,
Yeah,
right?
he's cutting himself. He's all kinds of weird. But like, so you see that. But so then she tries to talk to a sketch artist, and this is my favorite. So like, does this look like him? Does this look like him? And it's like the way they try to draw his cheekbones. It just
Tracy, it looks like, not to be mean, but who drew that? It looks like one of the Planet of the Apes or something. Here.
It's just it's unfortunate.
It looks like a bad rendition of Fred from Scooby-Doo.
It does, and it's funny because there's actually I think there's like at least two of them. Maybe they went beyond that, but Jeff Fahey did a series of films called The Sketch Artist, right? Like Courtney Cox, the first one, and she's the blind girl who gets attacked and is like, "I'm the blind girl. Let me tell you what he looks like." And he's like, "Ee!" And I'm like, "Okay," but this movie is so ridiculous because and she's earnest, like she's like, "I think that's him. I think I understand," and then he shoots himself like. This is kind of lighting that you would give to make a woman look like he really cares. He's very vain the way he's shot. And, you know, even when he's sweating, it's like there's like little drips and he's got neon behind him and sparks. And it's just so.
She's so naive in her. I think she asks him, like, why can't they just put bad people like this away? Or it's all like we're in Blue Velvet, or like she's like, how could this happen? Why don't they just put bad people away? Or
it makes no sense. But then again, the psychology of whatever the satanic axe gang is. We have our cop whose hair is forever changing in every scene, depending on where she's at. Yeah. With this guy, and they seem to. She's like, I know where she is. She's in the hospital. I'm gonna bring you to her. And it's like, yeah, we all know where she is. I mean, it's the oddest thing.
Can you show me that picture, the last one of Stallone that you put up?
This one or
no, that close up.
Yeah.
Okay, so like, what is it with his? Eyes, his eyes are like kind of up and like half inside his eyelid, right? Yeah. Like he's about to go to sleep, but that's his normal look. How do you do that? I want to do that.
It's accentuated because of the waxed eyebrows, which not everyone was doing in '96 as a male action star. That was a little, progressive. And I think this is after the first set of eyelid.
I was just going to ask you, Tracy, do you think he's already had work done? Or?
Absolutely. This is not the piece of Rocky.
Right.
Like
this is the first. That's why his eyes are like that. This is early work.
He's working it out.
Okay.
You look at him in this, or even Fist, and you're like, "There's no way it's the same face."
No, and that's fine. I mean, look, he's a handsome man. But it is. I think it gets weirder and weirder as you go into the.
Do you think he's handsome, like Hollywood handsome, or unconventionally handsome? Because I always thought he was unconventionally handsome, which I think is why the plastic surgery to lift everything over time made him look even weirder.
I think he was considered by some in that era a handsome looking man and a heartthrob for many.
Okay.
But in the 80s, Tracy, right? In
In the 80s,
Rocky
70s.
kind of has a baby face still there. In the
looks
first
like a
Rocky.
real person in
Yeah.
Rocky. You buy him as Rocky. He's not cut and that because he wouldn't be. He's fighting on meat and he's running the streets of Philadelphia before people are up. And he's a real guy. It's like Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis has a normal, wonderful guy body in the first Die Hard. He wasn't like trying to be Arnold. And that's part of why his John McClane, like, yeah, he seems like he could be a cop from New York who's into LA, for a weekend or whatever. And I think that's part of it. But like, I think when you start to get one of my favorite movies, which also low-hanging fruit, y'all, somebody bring us The Specialist. I mean, nothing's better than Sharon Stone and Sylvester Stallone in the same film. Wow.
Naked together in a shower.
Best ass. They're doing ass shots left and right. It's amazing.
Tracy, Rod Steiger doing a Cuban. In what world is Rod Steiger Cuban?
Yeah, it's like, what? You think you could come in here?
Yeah, I want my son to be protected.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, at the time of
and Eric Roberts is his
Eric
son.
Roberts. And John Voight in Anaconda, whatever that Amazon accent is, he's like, oh, it's like
all this is the fault of Scarface. It's Brian De Palma's fault.
Yeah, you're right, Todd. You're right. Everyone, they're trying to do a poor Stephen Bauer impression, or who was really the only authentic like Cuban person probably on that set.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Stephen Bauer, by the way, is in that straight-to-video 90s movie I referenced with Bridget Nielsen called Body Count. He plays Robert Davi's partner.
Ooh, God, that's a lot of cocaine on one set. That's
yeah.
Tracy, I can't leave the what about James Woods?
James Woods, totally together. I just feel like that, and there's like a Gloria Estefan soundtrack. It's ridiculous, and he's just shooting himself like he's like as pretty as Sharon.
Like if you want a good James Woods bad guy double feature from that era, it's this and the remake of The Getaway.
Yeah,
with Alec Baldwin.
And Singer. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think James Woods is ever? Do you think he's ever coming back, or he's done? Right?
No,
I think we'll see how his lawsuit against the DNC for destroying his career goes. But I think it's going to go great, and I think that he's got a real shot of doing some movies made by Mel Gibson.
Yes, and he and Vince Vaughn can do a fun story together. No, but people were he's so toxic that they didn't let him promote Oppenheimer. He had the rights to the book, so he's a producer on Oppenheimer.
Wow.
And so, but people didn't want anyone to know that. He wasn't invited to any of the parties. I actually had a project that he was attached to, and I said very clearly to my partner, with all due respect, if you want me to try to help, I cannot go out with him attached. So if you want to pay him off out of your cut and he's not involved anymore, then we can have I can't in good conscience do that. And because he was tweeting all this like crazy anti-women stuff, and I'm like, I can't go in as the female producer and suggest this is
beyond that. Like, he has a very clear long-standing reputation of being a fucking asshole to everyone. It has nothing to do with his politics, zero to do with his politics. John Voight has the same politics. John Voight still works because he's not an asshole to everybody when he's on set. That's it.
I was on a set with James Woods years ago. I was an extra, as a reporter, and he was telling the extras to speak if they wanted to. Or
wow,
the ADs wanted to kill him. They're like, you're not allowed to talk to him. Don't listen to anything that he tells you. Yeah, his reasoning was, you're an actor, right?
Yeah.
Hey, if I'm an actor, you say whatever you want to say.
He was trying to torpedo the goddamn set. That's what he was doing.
Well, it's funny. I mean, we just did Blown Away a couple weeks ago, and watching Tommy Lee Jones try to have an Irish accent is also a joy to behold. Like, so going back to like
Leprechaun,
yeah, that would have been good. I love that you know this, Jeff Luce, the pilot. So welcome back, Cotter. James Woods is in it. I love this. Jamie Lee, Tommy Lee Jones is in the pilot to Charlie's Angels. He plays Sabrina Duncan. Kate Jackson's character would be love interest in the pilot. But it's like he's a baby. It's like Isadora Mars babyish, Tommy Lee. Anyway, we digress, which is our way. So we're looking for this picture because that should tie it up.
I know we're about we've gone deep into the thing. We're bouncing around a bit on the narrative, but I would like to go back to like the end of the first act and talk about this very important scene that I have a clip of.
Oh yes.
and talk about what happens in the scene. Here, I'll show it. Here you go.
Boulevard Steak Restaurant. They say it happened right after they finished dining at the popular steakhouse by Ventura Boulevard and Mitaliha Avenue, which is a well-known celebrity hotspot. The co-owner, Paul Carroll, just spoke to us exclusively and says he's grateful that nobody was hurt, but crime for them has become a big problem. They own 2 other restaurants and will beef up security. He says the gunman jumped out of a car and caused chaos.
I love that. And what is the bit with like the tip of the piece? It's the weirdest thing.
It's what, like, he made that choice as an actor. He was doing something. I don't know what it was, but it's so specific, and it creates it. It raises so many questions about Marion Cobretti as a person. And for me, the first time I saw it, it was like the rest of the movie. I was like, but he eats pizza with scissors.
Well, it's a tiny piece. It's the only piece in the box. He cuts it in half. So I'm thinking maybe he doesn't like the crust. Like, like, it makes no sense.
No,
nobody has ever eaten a pizza like that ever.
Before or since.
It's only one time.
But it's one of those weird things where you just know that Sly's like, I'm gonna try this. And George is like, okay. And then they left it in the movie. I mean, it's just, but it's so, and then behind him, he's like right on the beach in this like sexy Venice loft. I'm like, you must be a corrupt cop because you shouldn't be there. Yeah. And then we just get into action. One of my favorite things of this era, there's always some shootout. There's always some mishigas going on at a hospital. I swear to God, always looks like Halloween 2. It's badly lit. There's no one around. It's like, there's only one nurse.
That's the thing, Trey. Yeah, there's no one around her. No. And then when she hits the fire, all of a sudden there's 100 people like in the hall immediately,
Yeah.
Why are movie hospitals, Tracy, you make a good point. Halloween 2 and just movie hospitals in general are always like that. They're mostly deserted. What is that? Why does that happen?
Well, no, hopefully. But also the difference between this is not a Warner Brothers movie and this is like a Clovis film is that they don't even try to do sound design in the scene. It's literally quiet. Have you ever been to a hospital that doesn't have beeping something or other? There's a phone, there's a ring, right? They don't even try to have sound effects in this.
Is this stealth single payer propaganda, do you think?
I think it's probably an HMO. I'm not sure what's going on there.
It's definitely not a PPO.
It's definitely not a PPO. Literally the lighting, again, this was a little bit like my student short, but yeah, but it's a trope that we have in horror films and action films. And I love that when, like in Halloween 2, famously, most of it set in the hospital the night later, and Jamie Lee, and the one of the worst wigs in cinema history, is in bed for half of it. And then when David Gordon Green does his trilogy, the second one in his trilogy, they're also still in the hospital, but that one's a little bit better lit, but it's the same trope, it's the same stuff, and you're just like, it's such a convention, but everything in this movie is a convention. We've got the helicopters, we've got the motorcycles, we've got the truck so he can, Rambo with a machine gun. We've got carts that are knocking over everywhere, going wrong way on the right side of the freeway and the wrong side of the freeway, and backing up and shooting and all that. It's like every conceit you can have. Like they just threw it all together in that kind of, like, I like Death Wish 3 because it's the craziest. It's the most Bonzo. This one is trying to do that, but like with an A-list star with this patina that it's a studio picture, and Warner's picked it up, so they treated it like that. There's
that great overhead shot too that we got in those. It turns into, it's a full-fledged horror film, and that scene in the where he's busting through the door and she's like, "Leave me alone."
Right.
You get the over.
Yeah, and I think to Todd's point, trying to be Clint Eastwood much. This is pretty much the sudden impact poster that they use in an action scene, with our bad guy, blowing up Long Beach. Again, we have the nitro that's there. We've got, again, the way he is lit. Like, I like that he's in focus and she's not. Like, everything about this. But to your point, that the old fashioned stunts, the Venice kind of bumpy thing. It's really fun.
I love the point, by the way, that Max made, that this is a horror movie.
It's a horror film
because it is all the things that a horror movie, and there have been before this. There are other, like Chuck Norris did Silent Rage, and there were like action stars in horror movies. This one,
Hero and the Terror,
Hero and the Terror. This one just didn't market it that way.
Well,
and there's also with Chuck Norris. If we're going to do Chuck Norris horror, you can't forget Hellbound, in which he actually fights a demon from hell.
It presaged his like evangelical thoughts. But then you have the trope where you have to always yell at your police guy.
Well, it's always against the suits, right? Or that was the whole
always against the suits. But then you have these kind of bucolic shots, where it has some scope, and they bother to kind of get some magic hour shots in there, which is kind of fun. My favorite is, again, this is the Coke placement, but like it's like who's wearing the Newsy Boy hat better kind of thing. So cute. They're both adorable. But then I look at Stallone again. This is the guy who's like, I'm gonna get with Brigitte. So this is how he tries to hit on her. Like he brings over this plastic hamper. And the conceit is that she's a supermodel who is pounding down French fries drenched in ketchup. And I'm like, on what planet is that body doing?
It's movie logic, Tracy. All movie alcoholics have 6-pack abs. They all have abs that are visible.
It's almost, Tracy, when they could get him out of his trailer. I'm sure he didn't do anyone's coverage or anything. Or it's almost like there was no reason to just put some props out there. I'll use the environment, with the bobblehead doll, and I'll just grab this burger. And
then also, if you look really closely, on the other side is RC Cola, and you can kind of make out behind his head. I should have gotten a shot like a second later, but there's a King Cobra joke behind his head.
Oh,
that's going on. So like these kind of, again, it's like Heinz ketchup.
Was this movie trying to fuck with the cola wars of the time? Is that why?
It's around the new Coke and
it could
so,
be a thing.
Billy Joel didn't start the fire.
No.
But Cobra started the fire.
He started the fire. This movie is ridiculous on so many wonderful levels. It's just, but again, this is the scene where she's like, he's with a relationship with a woman. A woman? Like it's like they're thinking. It's like he keeps repeating the last line of dialogue. It's kind of like Screenwriting 101. Yeah.
It's almost like a Meisner exercise. It's just bizarre. And what's even more bizarre is that you're strangely like leaning into the French fries and the it's like I would have preferred another name like Alice. Like they're connected in some weird way.
If someone's gonna be with me, she'd have to be a little crazy. And then Brigitte, who doesn't know him from Adam, but every time she's around him, she almost dies. And she's like, like that's not the reaction you want as a woman. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to hang out with the guy where I almost get killed every day. It's like, what?
When they're in
trying to be the woman that he wanted, and by he, I mean Sylvester Stallone, and I imagine their marriage was just like this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's no judgment. However you meet. But I do think it's a bold on her behalf to be like, here's my naked picture, my phone number. And then that turned into a marriage and a film career for her. Good for her.
Yeah, God bless.
Good for her.
God
And again,
bless.
better than she needs to be.
I still love her. I think she's great.
She has a good presence. I don't know. She's one of those, like, somehow put her in a smart Sundance film, get her nominated for supporting actress and blow everyone's mind kind of thing.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's like I'm not watching her for the acting. I'm watching her for the charisma and just the look. She's a giant woman, and I like giant women.
She was a great foil for Eddie Murphy in Cop 2.
Which is interesting because Stallone turned that down for this, and then his wife went and played around with Eddie Murphy. That must have pissed him off.
And she had an affair with Tony Scott too, which he admitted to it destroying his marriage.
Oh,
yeah,
I didn't know that.
Some good gossip.
That's good.
Yeah.
Tony Scott had an affair with Bridget Nielsen.
He says it's what ruined that marriage.
Wow.
That would do it. That would do it.
Why? People keep doing these directors. They don't know when to just walk away.
Well, he was a guy. He didn't get the Olivia Wilde treatment. It all worked out for everybody, except for the wife. But the old-fashioned stunts and the scale of the pyrotechnics, the motorcycle, all practical, which is also nice to see. But they really blew up this set. I mean, this is a significant burn on set. I mean, this is a lot of money, you know.
As ridiculous as it all is, that it looks like that all of that happened on the set. Or, you know, there's not. Yeah. This is before we could superimpose anything.
The gun in that photo, by the way, looks literally like the one Colby had in that sketch.
It does. It's a little silly.
Yours is better. Yeah.
I like your color better. But then, as always, and this is another trope that I think we were already seeing by the time this came out, because I remember saying, "Oh, I've seen this ending before," and then Terminator 2 probably put the final thing. But you go to there's the refinery that's going to have all kinds of sparks and flames and look how cool he is. He finally drops the match to set some poor guy on fire. Again, old-fashioned stunt work, real burn. And again, the way he lights himself. I mean, this he's a vain dude. He's a vain dude. That's all I can say.
I forgot about him setting the grenades and then he uses it to take people. I forgot about all that.
Yeah. It's interesting, it's like the guy looks like a large staple gun. That's a true story. Let's see, as a kid, the axe bikers taking over town like it was nothing terrified me. Okay, they just grabbed the cops and took over. Well, lots in this movie scared me. Some of it still scares me, but for different reasons. I hear you on that one, Joseph.
I think it was meant to scare you.
Yeah, I mean it's intimidating, but also just when you think, okay, is this an action film with like guys going mano a mano? Like this guy would break Stallone in real life. There's
no question about it.
But just when you think it can't get cheesier and they're trying to be edgy, we do shots like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like we're lighting him. It's like almost like a music video kind of sequence. And then fast we can say Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? Stallone puts this guy he could never lift in real life on a hook.
This has been revisited by Stallone, this very type of action sequence, mano a mano, where Stallone is facing someone there's no way he could beat in real life.
It's like Drago
the Walter Hill movie Bullet to the Head, which came out only like 7 or 8 years ago, ends with Stallone having this exact same fight with Jason Momoa.
Yeah,
there's no way Stallone can beat Mimosa, especially not the age he is now. Yeah,
it's so
even Wesley Snipes in Demolition Man or in his. I was almost going to mention John Lithgow. I'm like, there's some elements on that helicopter, but okay, he can. He can probably take down John Lithgow.
Yeah, I don't know. Lithgow's pretty fucking tall. I don't know.
He had a period where he was playing all these villains too. I remember like Ricochet or
one of my favorites, Raising Cain, where it's like good John
Yeah.
Lithgow, bad John Lithgow, De Palma. You know, that was another one of the taglines I remember.
Isn't it De Palma's birthday like today?
It is. It is. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Brian De Palma, you son of a bitch.
But Raising Cain, I remember the trailer or the poster tagline was deceptive, demented De Palma.
how that's when you know you've made it that you're the shit, right?
You're the shit when you're the tagline in your own poster. It's like, oh my God. And it's the only film that De Palma directed with his then wife, my mentor, Galen Hurd, producing. And it doesn't, it is another so bad it's delicious, I would argue. But it is just fun. And I remember when the ads came out, they're like, Brian De Palma finally has his Psycho. And I'm like, well, then what the hell is Dressed to Kill? You know, like, it's like, I think
is Jeff correct when he asks, doesn't one of the bad guys in Die Hard die with a hook too?
Yeah.
I know there's like a guy gets hung by a chain, but is there a guy who gets hooked?
Isn't it a chain? Is it
the final fight with the guy from
Good Enough, the ballet
he wrapped the chain around his neck and hangs
Alexander
him.
Goodenough.
Good Enough, yeah.
Maybe
it's not a hook, it's a hanging.
There's not a hook on it? I don't know. That's a good question. I'm going to check.
There might have been a hook on it, but he didn't die by hook.
He didn't get the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
McClane just wraps the chain around his neck and then uses his weight to, counterbalance him into dying.
Right, as one does.
Good job, John McClane. Good job.
And then again, it's like glamour sweat. His best friend makes it, which is nice.
Just like the original Dirty Harry.
Right.
That guy makes it, and then he says to Dirty Harry, "I'm not doing this shit anymore. It sucks."
And I love when the cops are like, good job, Cobra. Is there anything we can do for you? He's like, I gotta have my car fixed. And like, it's not in the budget, so basically, go fuck yourself. Anything else?
Why did you offer him that? It was like so
great. Can we do anything for you? Can you fix my car? No, it's not in the budget.
Again,
which is great. And they gave that line to Art LaFleur. I think it's one of the funniest moments in the movie. God bless Art LaFleur again.
But again, it's that thing where he has money for a classic car, fully tricked out, and he has a sweet pad on the beach off the boardwalk in Venice. I don't think the Zombie Squad detectives, the loser last,
they left out, like, the reason why this movie is an hour 27 minutes is they left out this whole thing in the first act where you learn that his mom gifted him all these things in her will. Her rent-controlled Venice apartment, her weird sports car. It was all from his mom.
Monica Geller thing. Grandma left me this friend's loft. Oh, okay. Let's go with that.
Makes sense, right? It's the Republican way, you guys.
Okay, so Max, talk to us about final thoughts. What do you think about Cobra, seeing it now versus seeing it then? If someone hasn't seen it,
pitch it to somebody who has not seen it now.
Yeah,
I will say that that it's Stallone at the peak of his craziness, and it comes off more batshit crazy than it even was like back then. Or I feel that we could do this show and watching it in real time, and that we could do 10 minutes on every single beat.
Yeah,
because it's like what we're when Bridget forgets her bag and she's like, let me go back, and the security guy, it's like we can't just shoot him, we have to drive the van into him.
Mm-hmm. And also, this goes back to the psychology of no woman forgets her purse.
Right.
That doesn't happen. That's
there you go.
I mean, basically, it's an excuse for me to turn around and go back because someone's going to get a hatchet. It's like, but that's just, again, it's a false beat to put together in a sequence that makes no sense, that continues. And one of my favorite moments in the axe fight scene in the parking garage, again, another trope, always in a parking garage, watch out kids, is that he has this axe and he puts over his head and he goes like this, but he knocks out the water line because he's so tall with the axe. So then it's all wet. It's an excuse to get Brigitte Nielsen wet in a parking, so she could be wet with her fabulous hair running around, and you're like, oh my God, like this.
That's just smart filmmaking.
Right.
Also,
Yeah.
But also, Tracy, they give up awfully easy on her too,
They
right?
do. I mean,
Like they're willing to drive the van into. I mean, there's nowhere she can hide. She's just like underneath behind like a pillar, you know. And they're like, let's go. Or, you
I
know?
know. I'm like, you're not. What kind of cult is this? Yeah. Like,
I'd
It was
say that-
quitting time. They have union hours in this cult, so at a certain
yeah, it
point,
was a different era. We had
it's a batshit crazy 90 minutes. You know, I watched it alone last night. My fiance's like, you know, I think I'm gonna pass on Cobra. And when it was over, like, she's like, what's going on? It's done, and I'm like, yeah, it's like a.
Are you sure you want to marry this person?
I mean, you know, and I remember it opened Memorial Day weekend in 1986, and yeah, what a great.
yeah.
So you mentioned Ferris Bueller, of course.
Karate
Lee,
Kid
and
2. Top Gun.
the Fly. Howard the Duck is questionable, right? But we had Short Circuit, The Money Pit earlier, and I remember I had to choose between this and Poltergeist 2. They opened up back to back, and it was at the El Toro 4, 5, and 6. I know you know what that is.
Bless.
Yeah.
We grew up there together. Yep.
And we ended up going to Poltergeist 2 because my friend's mom is like, she's like, the ghost story's fine, but the violence and, you know, you're not allowed to.
Yeah.
You can see the ghost movie, not the Stallone hooking people up.
Poltergeist 2 scared me. That the preacher, I think Bernie Sanders played the preacher. Yeah. Let me in. Y'all gonna die. It's like one of Bernie's early moments, I thought.
I would love if it was actually Bernie Sanders, because like the voice would be so different.
Kill
I'm
him!
here.
Kill
I'm
him!
here.
Are you in? I have some free insurance for you.
Go outside with me.
Oh my god, it was rigged. It was rigged. Yeah, that would have been a different film for sure.
It's a totally different
Oh
story.
my God.
Well, all jump scares. It's every time you talk.
Oh my
Like, oh,
A lot of finger pointing. A lot of finger pointing.
I mean, if you're a Stallone person and you haven't seen this, I
good point.
it's a must.
It's peak Stallone.
It's a must.
I would put this and The Specialist on a double bill at the New Beverly. I think it's too, like, he's so into himself, and they're both super cheesy, but they're so cheesy they're wonderful, and I just think that they're so fun together.
I think too, Cobra is, when you look at it, Cobra is what an artist named Sylvester Stallone wanted to do.
Right.
Like, he wasn't making any compromises or trying to figure out what would be best for, you know, the audience or anybody else. He was making the movie he wanted to make. This is unfiltered Sylvester Stallone, and I think that's important. And when you ignore artists' voices, you're ignoring a reality, and we need to really learn to respect this kind of risk taking.
Ego on display. Yeah, no, I also, we talk about this a lot on the show too. I am a sucker for legit movie stars, and I miss having a lot of them. I miss the so-called vanity projects. Like, he understood the assignment. The trailer absolutely says what you're going to get. It delivers on that promise, and more. Yeah, I mean, like, right. So I kind of feel like we used to just make fun programmers like this. And that's not to say that that's a bad thing. We want popcorn and we want to be entertained. It's like, that's a good one too. Through Demolition Man is fabulous as well. Yeah. But I think that's okay. And I worry, like, we're not really doing that now. It's like Brad Pitt works for scale and Oscars, Marvel IP tentpole, and this middle class. I'm hoping streamers will fill that void a little bit, because I'd like to see these kinds of films again. Yeah, they're really fun.
Tracy, do you think that it's because like even Tom Cruise isn't like they say that last Mission Impossible was a disappointment, or is it because there isn't a surefire that you just can't predict what people are going to turn out for? Do you think that there is no classic movie star anymore? Because the year before, Maverick was like one of the biggest movies ever.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Stars, the truth of the matter is stars don't open anything guaranteed anymore. What does, unfortunately, is intellectual property. That's it. That's the star of the day. It's not about humans anymore, and we're shifting into this AI shit too at the same time, and it's we're really abandoning ourselves with this evolution of
it's
cinema.
hard. I mean, I know I go off on this a little bit, probably too much, but it's frustrating to me, and it keeps coming back for me up at work. So it's like a consistent conversation today about this in regards to romantic comedies. And why aren't we doing romantic comedies? And streamers are. And the answer is purely economic. Like when I worked with Ms. Aniston, and she was doing that kind of like, it was like the picture perfect, and it was Object of My Affection, and it was like she's the one, and all the early films that she did. There was absolutely, particularly the ones that she was top lining, like Picture Perfect and Object of My Affection, there was a formula. Like we can make it between 13 and 15. You know, we could market it for 10 back then, right? And it would probably do about 35, 40 here. Home video would double that. And then friends traveled overseas, and you could make a nice little amount of money on essentially a 13 to $15 million all-in movie. That movie's success allowed her to transition right from being the TV star she was to being a film star. That's how most female stars, you know, you come up through the romantic comedy, Sandra Bullock, Julia Roberts, and if you stick a couple landings, then you get to do Sleeping with the Enemy, or you get to do Gravity or whatever. But like, if you're a smart person who programs for yourself, I think right now what I'm seeing, because people want to say what actors, quote unquote, mean anything to get your budget. And my thing is like, Morgan Freeman said this, and he's right. He's like, you know, hits can make stars, not necessarily the other way around. And I think it's like, we need to start giving younger actors, other actors chances to succeed. And instead of just casting like Jennifer Lawrence in the same thing. And so what I thought, and I'm with you, Max, it was not lost on me that we were told Tom Cruise and Maverick saved us one summer. The next summer, his Mission Impossible, which was great for what it is, right? Underperformed. Same thing with Barbenheimer. And then you put those two stars together with Blunt and Gosling, and Fall Guy doesn't open.
Yeah.
So it's like, but if I say I have Ryan Gosling attached to a project, I can get it financed like that. So
yeah,
there's a perception issue versus
it's interesting. It was always true about commercials too, that the numbers when you hired someone for $1 million to do, you know, a star to do your ad versus a scale actor, there was no difference in the returns that you got from the advertising campaign, but the star fuckery persisted always. So it's weird that like I'm sort of nostalgic for the star days, because I just kind of like the idea of a single artist doing their single vision of being a guy who lives in Venice and tears open shirts and puts his paper in the grill and
I also
you know, I miss that, because we don't get that anymore. We don't get like a single vision, for better or for worse.
We don't. And I think part of what Max is asking, maybe part of the answer, Max, is I think, this is me being the old person now, I don't think the TikTok generation, I don't think 20-somethings and teens and 30-somethings, the way we were like, oh shit, Sigourney has a new film, I have to go see it. Now it's like we've collapsed the theatrical window. They're on their phones. They can wait 17 days to see the Fall Guy if they really want to. And so I think younger generations who typically studios want to make things for are only showing up for, like Todd was saying, I think like the IP event things. Sometimes families can go too. So that's how you get that. But I think younger generations aren't like, I say this with my interns all the time. They're like, oh my God, we love Channing Tatum. I'm like, no, you don't. You like Magic Mike. It's okay to admit that. You're not supporting him in every film. You only go to see him when he has his shirt off, which I get. But there's a difference, whereas Sandra Bullock can open, God help us, The Blind Side, Gravity, Sleeping with the Enemy, not sleeping, While You Were Sleeping. It's like, it doesn't matter what genre, I can point to Sandra opening consistently, and she still does, whether it's The Heat, she has a buddy, you know, or whatever. And so she's one of those few, but she's also a different age. And I think most of the people I can still consider, look, Brad could open World War Z. He can't open Ad Astra because no one could, but he uses his star quality to try to do an interesting space film like Ad Astra, which I'd much rather see. My favorite, you know, J-Lo in Space Atlas, you know, guys, she's wearing glasses. She's smart. She plays chess too. Get it? Glasses, chess equals smart J-Lo.
He's as smart as Marky Mark in The Happening.
Oh my God, he's a cartographer. What about the bees? Yeah, no, it's so good.
Tracy, I used to spend a lot of time on middle school campuses because I directed a show that performed it. I never once kind of, you know, I would eavesdrop, what are the kids talking about? Or I would never once hear on Friday night, I went to see that. It's like it. before on Monday you talk about the movies that you saw on Friday and
Right.
Saturday. It's like it just doesn't matter to them. Or my kids go because I drag them, or they have no. Well, they kind of have a choice now that they drive. But before they'd have no choice, right? They'd have to come with me.
Right.
But I've got this beautiful 75-inch. I said, I'll just watch on my phone. I'm gonna just watch my. I'm like, what are you talking about? Or
Yeah, no, I literally, and I think people know that. I got some notes from someone who should not be named. Maybe it's a financier, who had some thoughts on a film that we have not even color timed yet, which is gorgeous, saying, let's make sure we brighten this up, so it'll look better on a phone. And I was like, I'm not talking about
wow.
because they're already thinking ahead to the expectation of people not caring to go to a movie anymore that's original, which is what I just did. And so it's like, I'm not going to even entertain that note because my director would shoot you, and he'd be right to. But again, it's a different kind of thing. And I still feel that way. Like I remember, Paul Schrader, who always is an interesting filmmaker to me. I'm curious to see anything he does. And when he did Master Gardener as kind of the last of the kind of the Man in Room trilogy that he did, I went because Sigourney and Joel Edgerton, I'm not missing a movie that they're in, but especially Paul Schrader's writing and directing. And so then when I didn't know anything about it because they didn't have any money, I showed up opening day. It was me, 3 gay men, obviously there for Sigourney. And he's doing updating Travis Bickle for the Proud Boy era. And he has some interesting things to say still. And I thought, this is a shame that no one's seeing this movie.
Yeah.
Failure of this movie will make it harder for someone like me who would like to make one to get the financing. And so
Joel Edgerton is that guy's Uncle Owen in the prequels? Is that the same?
Joel,
The Gift. Remember The Gift?
in The Gift, he was in the Baz Luhrmann, The Great Gatsby.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Warrior, Todd Warrior with Nick Nolte and Tom Hardy, the wrestlers, or the
Right.
UFC.
Was he in that movie with Octavia Spencer called The Shack, where he talks to Jesus in the woods?
I didn't watch that movie because
I'm pretty sure. It doesn't matter. We should do this, Tracy.
Okay.
We should do
You go
Be Bad or
first.
Be Bad.
You go
Wait.
first.
Hold on, Tracy. But first, I got to ask you, Tracy.
Yeah,
So how does what's that Blake Lively movie that just opened? It's made like 145 million. So is that an intellectual property like Todd was referring to, or are people going to that? I don't believe that people are going because Blake Lively is in a film, or nothing against her. She's fine. But is it just this book that has that strong of a?
It helped her get it made, and there is a generation that grew up with her on Gossip Girl who want to see romantic comedies. And I think it's the same thing you had with Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell. Everyone made fun of it. It still made $100 million.
Yep.
And so they are proving that there is a theatrical audience for this film. And it's like, I don't like that Netflix is like, oh, we're looking for a bucket of romantic comedy. It's a bucket. So I'm like, you mean genre? I mean, anyway, but like but I think that's a good thing. But I think it's a combination of that plot, the girl they grew up with, like from Gossip Girl, and then there's the Ryan Reynolds crossover and stuff. But I think it's a slow month. There wasn't a lot of competition.
Yeah.
I think it's all those things together. I don't, that anyone's like, oh, this is an Oscar winner. But
Yeah, it's a whole lot of marketing points. It's boring.
Yeah.
All right. So Be Bad, Be Best is we're gonna give you some titles, Max, and you tell us if they're so bad nobody should see them, or they're so bad you gotta go. I'll go first. I don't know if you've been keeping up with the franchise, you guys, but the latest one is called Expendables. It's the 4th Expendables. I think that's why they put a 4 where there's an A supposed to be.
No.
Is this Be Bad or Be Best? Max, what is it?
It's Be Bad and Guilty. I've seen them all. Or starting with that first one, Tracy. That's a movie that I felt should have been made for me, or
Yeah.
It should have had all of the shit that I love, all of the stuff that should have been Be Best. And I just think that they're awful. And that last one, it looks like it's completely shot on a stage in front of a green screener. To me, it's unwatchable. And Sly shows up at the beginning. I'm just going to fly the plane, and then you're going to think I'm.
He's not in most of the movie. He disappears. Spoiler alert! Presumably dead within the first act, And then he shows up, as Max says, at the end with a plane to help people. And they're like, "Oh, you're alive!"
Oh
And
my
it was
God.
weird because Expendables was, for me, a Stallone franchise, not a Jason Statham franchise.
Right.
But I think he was trying to hand the baton over to Statham. But
And even though I say be bad, or when they make 6, I'll be there opening weekend. Like you know, yeah.
Well, it's funny because for a while it was in development with Avi Lerner's group, the Millennium Group that does the Expendables, and the London is Falling and the Something is Falling, franchise with John. But what I think is funny about this one, and
a friend of the show, Seth Sherwood, of course,
yes,
was one of the writers on London Has Fallen.
London Has Fallen. One of the things I think is funny was they had such a success with the Expendables that they were in development on the female auxiliary version, the Expendables.
I was so excited about that. That sounded great.
They wanted Sigourney Weaver, right, Tracy?
They did. They wanted Sig, but they were also like, she would have been like the Sly and Linda Hamilton, but then like Cynthia Rothrick and like all these like badass, can we get Pam Grier, like get all these like amazing women. And I was like, that would actually be interesting to me. I have not seen this one, although Todd, can you put the picture back up? Because this is my favorite tagline maybe now. They'll die when they're dead. I mean, I'm going to say be best because that's ridiculous. Is that Megan Fox?
yeah, it's Megan Fox.
Oh my God. So you have Megan Fox, 50 Cent. There is so much crazy in this.
It's Andy Garcia, right?
They'll die when they're dead. I'm going to go be best, man, because that trailer alone, or that tagline.
I see both of these points of view. I'll be honest, I'm on the fence about the thing because it really is bad, and it's part of a franchise that's kind of bad anyway.
Yeah, Max is the perfect guest. Thank you, Anne Duvernay.
In a fun way, it's bad, the franchise. Yeah. So this one takes the badness and amplifies it massively. Yeah. So, maybe it's be best for that reason. It's the most train wrecky of the bunch.
Okay.
Tracy, at some point, I think Andy at some point is wearing an ascot. Like it's just bizarre. And Costner's, I feel that now that Costner has to wear a scarf around his neck and everything.
I'm obsessed with Kevin Costner in 3 Days to Kill.
He's got a scarf, like a scarf.
Wearing assassin in France, because that was where Luc Besson's tax rebates were. And he plays throat cancer also. And it has one of my favorite opening lines. He's in the hospital and he's like, "Okay, doctor, tell me what I'm looking at." He's like, "I'm going to have some terrible news for you. Your brain cancer has moved to your lungs." And I'm like, "What? Like, is that sure."
Does that happen?
Costner's like, "How long do I have?" And he's like, "I will get you affairs in order." So then all of a sudden, he's like, Amber Heard shows up. Good things only follow when Amber Heard shows up. Her character is the wolf. And she has an inexplicably different wig in every scene you see her. And she's like, "So Kevin, I have the cure for cancer and you have cancer, but here's what I need from you. I'm going to take you to brutalist architecture in Berlin and France. And I want you to kill a bunch of people in a series of rooms. And if you can kill X number of people in 3 days, then I'm going to give you this thing and it will cure your cancer." And so he's like, "Okay." So just met this broad out of nowhere, has like a hypodermic needle that's this big. She sticks him with it. And she's like, "Now, when you have the shakes, which you will, the only way to quell it is if you have to do a vodka chaser." So Kevin Costner allows Amber Heard to jack him up with some unknown cure to cancer. He has to drink, and it's an Absolute bottle. He's writhing on the floor, pounding vodka. "Okay, now I can go kill somebody." And you're like, this is Costner. I guess Liam Neeson was not available. So it's like the Taken guys producing this. I think 3 Days to Kill is a scream because it's McG directing. He's in on the joke. Kevin is too. And I don't know about Amber Heard. I never do. But it's fun, and the set pieces are amazing. Haley Stanfield plays his daughter, and she gives a great performance. He's with.
I don't believe for a second that Mick G is in on any jokes. What's your movie, Tracy?
Okay,
what's
my movie is kind of current. You can stream it. It might still be in the theaters. And I was curious what both you gents, because I know you both love genre. Osgood Perkins' recent new film, Long Legs, Nicolas Cage. I was curious. Did you guys see it?
Yeah.
Max, go first. What did you think about Long
Legs? Be best for me.
Okay.
Yeah. As I sat, going in with zero expectations, I didn't even realize that Tony Perkins' son directed it, right?
Wrote it.
Has
Yeah.
this guy been working? I don't know if I admit on that.
He has. He's done a couple indies.
I don't know how these Nepo babies suddenly appear. I don't know. It's crazy.
No, I was with this thing from beginning to, and it's a little Silence of the Lambs, but I was surprised. I jumped a few times. The Cage performance is batshit crazy, but somehow it's one of those that I was shocked at how well it worked for me.
Yes.
After a little while, I forgot it was Nick Cage with the weird wig, and at first you think, oh, why couldn't you have just produced it? This is just going to take me out of the film, but it somehow I was into it.
Okay. I get. What about you, Marion? What did you think?
I'm 100% be bad about Long Legs. I think it's the most overrated horror movie of the year, easily.
Ooh,
I think that it's mostly dull. It takes so long for anything to happen in this movie, and what's supposed to string you along while very little is happening is just these creepy shots of Nick Cage in this weird makeup, and he's not scary for me. Completely distracting. As you said, Max, it worked for you. It did not work for me. It was complete distraction. They were trying to take me, like when Nick Cage is not on stage, they're trying to do this very slow burn, subtle, elevated horror thing that a lot of people try to do now that I think they should stop doing because it's boring. And then it's broken up with like Nick Cage's stupid performance. Nick Cage works great when he's being stupid and silly and the right thing. This was not it. This was not the tone for Nick Cage. On no level did Long Legs work for me at all. It's definitely be best.
Interesting. I'm going to say be best. I get it's a slow burn. I get the kind of horror we mostly.
I mean, it's like we say this all the time, slow burn. So this is a movie that was like meant to be slow burn, but I would suggest that within the first 10 minutes, the pilot light went out. So it's just noxious fumes that you're breathing in without the fire. But if you light a match, then there'll be a fire, but nobody did.
Yeah, I thought it had some interesting ideas. I think it had an atmosphere and a creepy tone that did. I was with you, Max. It did hold my interest. I definitely think there are flaws. But there was something, and I like that Joseph brought this up too, that the idea that it was kind of a period piece in the 90s, but it also had a modern horror sensibility to it, which is what Todd's reacting to. It's like, oh, it's elevated, and that's fair. It is. It's trying to be, at least. I liked it. I thought it was an interesting movie. I don't think I'll see it again, so that's
agreed.
But I did not mind Nicolas Cage in this. But I don't want to give too much away in case people are seeing it, because I guess it's still an early release. But you think, okay, this is a crazy sick person, i.e. Buffalo Bill or whatever, and then there is something that might be truly supernatural to it. And I think to whatever degree you do or do not like the narrative, they either do or do not do that well enough. But I thought it was an interesting big swing with where they went with it that I was okay with. But again, I repeatability, I don't think so. Not for me.
Tracy, the woman, the lead, who is that? Or should I know her from a TV show or something?
I'm sure I should. I haven't looked her up. She was okay. But I think that's I think it's hard when you ask an actor to just not be believing what they're seeing with their own eyes and be in a state of panic for the whole thing.
I'm also like, this movie, like as far as the time period it was supposed to be set in, I didn't get any feeling for 1993. There's a lot of movies there was something called, I feel like it was called like Totally Killer or whatever. It was like a slasher movie made recently that's set in the 80s. And I watched it and I was like, well, this is set in the 80s in the way that movies are set in the 80s, not in the way reality was. And if that's what you're going for, fine. But then you don't do enough of the 80s stuff that 80s movies did in the horror genre to make yourself actually interesting. I think the whole reason that filmmakers make these choices to do, let's do a horror movie set in the early 90s or the 80s or the 70s. We'll just go back, like Ty West, always going back. And it's just because these are people who don't know how to make cell phones scary. Like if we have too much, it's easier to go back in time when we didn't have this stuff and try to scare us, leaving us in this place of, yeah, we didn't have the technology back then. But I think it's a cheap trick. It's just like, try to make modern shit scary. It is in real life, so it should be able to do it on a horror movie.
You know, off the top of your head, I think the 90s are a hard era. I don't know if I've seen it depicted well on screen that it wasn't made in the 90s, or
right.
Unless you have a bunch of people in flannels, or it was kind of like void of anything cooler,
Yeah, I know, it's true. I think we're in that mode now because there's that 30-year cycle, right? So like when we were kids watching Back to the Future, that was our parents' youth. And I think now people are watching these things in the 90s. It's a 30-year cycle. I think we see that a lot in film, but I also feel like the 90s, you're right, without it, it's the grunge, it's, the certain kinds of hair stuff, things like that, but it's not as vivid or colorful by design as the 80s. We were, the idea that like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, these are, neon does not come to mind, right? So I think that's true. I agree with you. I mean, I do feel like, like for example, if we were going to remake Deliverance today, one of those guys would have a sat phone and we're fine. Right. So there are certain things maybe we shouldn't remake. That's one of them. But like, you should have to be a little bit more clever.
I think like I would like to see more horror movies set right now, because I think it's, and the thing I think you very easy to tap into is the green room thing. That's right. Everybody's loving that guy's movie on Netflix. I was on the fence about it, but Green Room's amazing. But just tapping into the political climate of the United States of America right now and figuring that out is as scary as you can get. As scary as you can get.
I get it. All right. What's next? Are we boosting? Next?
Should we end? I feel like we should end on boost because that's a positive.
Okay. Note. Let's do when bad films happen to good people.
Yeah. When bad films happen to good actors. You want to go first this time, Tracy?
All right. This could be an unpopular opinion. I thought the first film was lousy, and I thought the sequel was reprehensibly unwatchable. I'm talking about Knives Out, which has the greatest casts assembled in recent time. I love everybody in this. It was the first time I paid attention to Ana de Armas. And she was so good in this. Daniel Craig's like, you need to put her in the Bond film. And I think she stole every scene she was with him in the Bond film too, and he let her, and I love that. He has that great line as Bond where he looks at her, but it's almost like Craig breaking character. He goes, oh, you're excellent. After she does this great action scene, and I thought, oh, that's a respect for actor. You waste my girl Jamie Lee. I got angry here. I think it's another one of those films that it's a cheat. And I don't like murder mysteries where it's a cheat and you can't figure it out, and I'll give you the clue you need at the last. I think it's not as bad as the second one, which was literally just lifting The Last of Sheila.
It's unwatchable, the second one.
Just watch The Last of Sheila. Speaking of Anthony Hopkins, who with Stephen Sondheim wrote the script for The Last of Sheila, and that was an all-star cast with the great like Diane Cannon. Raquel Welch, you had Richard Benjamin like doing some interesting stuff, James Coburn being creepy and fun. Like, so if you like the promise of the second Knives Out, where I guess Norton's playing Elon Musk or something, just go see Last of Sheila. So that's my pseudo boost, but I really think these are lousy films, and I'm glad everyone's getting paid. But look at this cast, y'all. We should be quoting this movie and talking about it, and there's a reason we're not, in my humble opinion.
But Tracy, how could they're saying that there's a third one now coming?
Yeah, they're making a third one.
Talk to me through the economic. They're saying it's going to cost like $250 million, or
everybody's getting paid.
How does that make sense for a net? Who's making money off these things?
Keep in mind, Netflix, their model is different. But even with the second one, they threw it in the theater for a limited time. They made back a lot of money, but they don't really care because their subscriber base, they don't need the box office. So
yeah, and no one understands what that means or what. It's bizarre.
It's a
Yeah,
way to get paid because studios aren't paying us, and us independent producers are starving and working on deferment to do things original out of this country. So I mean, it's all then these films show up and everyone gets their big payday if they're on screen, and it's like I don't begrudge anyone that. I just want the film to be better because I think
I
right now
was
it is
I
better.
was fine when I first saw this movie because it streamed. I didn't go to the theaters to see it. It was just
Yeah.
given to me for free. So I'm quicker to forgive movies that just show up in my living room that I don't have to think
That's
about.
fair. Yeah.
So like Knives Out was just sort of, to me, it was just sort of another sort of Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes movie. It was fine. It's cotton candy. It, it hits your tongue and it disappears, sort of thing. And in one ear, out the other. When I was done, I didn't feel bad. But then Knives Out 2, whatever the hell it was called, I watched that and I was like, this is so fucking shitty. How the fuck? I liked the first one, right? And then I went back and I watched the first one. And I was like, the sequel makes all the things that are wrong about the original clear. That's what it does.
Also, I would argue, and I know it's a signature character for him now, but whatever accent Daniel Craig is attempting to do should be on the list next to Tommy Lee as an Irish.
Genuinely awful. It's genuinely awful.
It's like we love the premise is great, right? Him playing this also in a franchise, this detective, but then the execution and that last one, Todd. It felt like it was almost 3 hours longer,
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's like when you're looking at Kenneth Branagh's what was it, A Haunting in Venice?
Yeah, the
third one of his French detective movies. You look at that and you're like, this fucking thing blows Knives Out 2 and Knives Out of the water. There's problems because that's not a good movie.
It's like I'm like, oh, good for Tina Fey, I guess. But like I don't like the Murder on the Orient Express. I don't like the Nile remake. Go back to the 70s. They're better. Those were better.
Yeah, I agree with you totally.
Who's that? Who is the film? Who is that? Ryan Johnson, the director?
Yeah, Ryan Johnson.
Yeah.
Has he done anything that we've liked? Or he did Looper, right?
Yeah, he did Looper. Yeah. He's done a lot of great stuff.
Yeah,
I like him. And most importantly, he gives Noah Segan regular work, and that's a good thing to do.
All right, what was your film, Todd?
All right, so my bad movies happening to good people is on a Sylvester Stallone. Yeah, I went with Stallone stuff tonight. That's what I did. This is a movie called Rhinestone, starring Sly and Dolly Parton. And I don't think this was a fair thing to do to Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton is as good as a person can be and as fun as an entertainer can be. She's a good actress. She's an amazing singer. This was wrong. It was wrong. Rhinestone was wrong.
She was coming off of 9 to 5, right? And the Best Little Whorehouse, which were big movies.
Yeah.
And
good and fun.
Bob Clark, right? Rhinestone, so the guy who did Porky's, A Christmas Story. Am I correct? Yeah.
Bob Clark. He did it. Yeah. And I love Bob Clark.
Black Christmas. Come on.
Oh yeah.
But like whoever was hired on this, it was all one guy's fault, and it's that guy with the yellow T-shirt and the steroid muscle.
Joseph Ruin Johnson.
He wanted Bob Clark, so Bob Clark said, "Well, fuck, I can leave Canada for 3 months."
The biggest paycheck he'd ever gotten, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's a good director. I mean, I love that there's two perennial Christmas stories it's a Christmas Story and Black Christmas could not be more diametrically opposed, and Bob Clark did both. Like massive points,
Yeah, he did Christmas right. All right, should we boost our things?
Yeah, let's do the boost.
Let's do the boost. We're going to talk about movies we love. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
I'll go first. So this was a new film to me. It's on Shudder right now, which I subscribe to because it keeps me somewhat sane. I'm just Sarah. I had not heard of it. I had not seen it before. I watched it this weekend. It's called Relic, not to be confused with The Relic with Penelope Ann Miller. And there's a creature in the Chicago Museum. It's not that film. This comes out in 2020. Emily Mortimer, who's just absolutely wonderful in this, and I like it because in the tradition of what Longlegs I think was going for, whether we think it achieved it or not, but a creep and a slow kind of, oh my God, atmosphere. This one starts to weave it out, but conceptually it's about a grandmother, a daughter, and her daughter. So 3 generations of women in this house that has like some kind of a supernatural, it looks like black mold, things are happening, creepy things shouldn't be here. What's going on with grandma? Is it possession? Is it something in that house? Is it what's going on? And there's a little bit of a mystery. And just when you think you've figured it out, there's a third act. It'll be slow for some, but if you hang in there to the third act, it ratchets it up in a way with 3 female protagonists in a horror film with some family trauma and cycles that is unusual. And the performances are really good. Like all these women are wonderful. So female director, writer, something to check out. I was embarrassed that I had missed it. I don't know where I was in 2020. I guess
I don't know. I don't know that I've seen this.
Yeah.
I'm going to look it up.
I'm going to check it out.
Creepy. So boosting that.
That's currently on Shudder now, Tracy?
Shudder now. Yeah, this month.
Awesome. I'm putting it on my damn watch list. I'll tell you what.
All right.
I'm gonna boost a movie, and I apologize if this is irresponsible. But I was trying to find a Stallone movie that I think is awesome, and I think this is awesome, and it's awesome for all the wrong reasons, the same fascistic reasons that we were talking about Cobra. But I feel like this is what he wanted to do when he did Cobra. And he couldn't quite get there, but then he did so much later.
Oh boy.
With the 4th Rambo film,
Yep.
Rambo, also a 90-minute picture.
Yep.
Incredibly irresponsible, fascist, racist as fuck. This movie is wrong-headed, but it's 90 minutes of just gore, of him wrecking every human person in his vicinity, except for Julie Benz, a friend of the show, Julie Benz, who's great in the movie. But for me, like my friends Steve and Steve, when we went to see this in the theater, they said they had never seen me look this childlike and happy as I was watching this ludicrous gore happen in front of me.
Love it.
Todd, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I just couldn't believe this was a major release from someone, or
Millennium.
And there are stories that he showed this to Arnold Schwarzenegger before, and that Schwarzenegger was like, "Oh, the hell did you get away with any of this?" and when he wrote it, he just did some research. He's like, "What is the most hellish, like the most shit political cut?" And he's like, "Burma. It's Burma. That's what it's at."
By the time the movie came out, it wasn't called Burma anymore.
Yeah,
but that's
right.
fine.
Well, also because I remember, and I don't remember the context exactly, but there was a project that the company I was at the time was flirting with working with this director. And so he was like, "Oh, you've got to see my release, Rambo." And so our office outing was to go see this as a matinee, Rambo. And I was working for someone at the time who really doesn't like genre movies and really can't handle violence. And so this was like her worst nightmare. I, of course, enjoyed the hell out of it. But this is not, again, women get picked on all the time. So fair time for Sly. He has really changed his face so much that for me,
his hair,
I couldn't get over. I'm like, if the idea that John Rambo has been in like The Forest, I'm like, it seems like he's been in like a Beverly Hills surgeon's office. I don't know if he's been.
Just to be sure that we're talking about the same Rambo movie. So Rambo, which was Rambo 4, was directed by Stallone.
Oh, was it him?
Yeah, he directed.
Then it was some other context.
Are you thinking about Last Blood?
No, it's the Burma. It's the Burma one. It might have been something else. It was somebody that we were thinking about.
He's got long hair in the Burma one. I mean,
yes,
what's left of it?
And he's got like, and I thought it was a wig, but yes, he is that, and he just looks so different that I was like, oh my God! And I remember it being the first time I'd seen him on the big screen in a while, and he looked so different. And to have your main character change so much is really hard and he kept doing the vanity close-ups, and he's a little older for that now. And I remember thinking someone needed to take care of him because he's not getting it. Like there's a way to make him look better. And like, I think as a producer, I'd be like, how can I make my star look, I want him to be badass and look.
There's only so much you can do with a face that's built like that. It worked for me in the movie just because there was so little like talking in between
That's true.
excessive violence. I was like,
Well,
I
I
don't
just remember
care.
the editing style was insane. Like it was so chaotic. I was like, where are we? What's
Yeah,
happening?
it wasn't Michael Bay extreme, but you're right. It
Pretty-
was, you know,
You're-
shaky.
You're literally seeing bodies get like
Blown up.
body parts flying in different
Yeah.
directions.
Squibs
I-
everywhere.
I just couldn't believe we were seeing that in a genre.
Yeah.
And also,
Yeah.
like, it was real squibs, but then computerized gore, which is also for me hysterical. So yeah.
yeah.
I would just say, if you like Stallone and
should
you
see
want
it.
to see his fascist best action movie, it's called Rambo.
But it's also an interesting because again, Rambo is such a huge franchise over the span of multiple decades at this point. Stylistically, how did we get from the pro-peace, war is problematic, John's right, what did we do wrong with our veterans, let's not do that again, to Rambo 2, to the third one, to this one, to like there's so much progression in but whatever his politics are, but like the filmmaking styles, like at least with Alien, as flawed as some of those films are, they still stick with mostly, maybe not the new one, but these are interesting directors who've had one or two films under their belt. We give them this franchise. You have the Xenomorph and the Ripley character in the 4 first films, but you give somebody a shot who's done a movie or two, like Ridley had done The Duelist.
Mhm.
Okay. But it's like, Jim, okay, you did the Terminator. Okay. But, and Fincher, right? So I feel like there's something interesting that they try to consistently create a world. I would argue Fetty absolutely is Xeroxing that world. He liked it so much. So there's still that thing. Rambo, I find each film wildly different.
Well,
Oh,
and
they are.
Todd, what's the political angle of that last one? Nothing. Just don't fuck with my niece or whatever, right? And if you the drug dealers, right? Or
yeah, the biggest it was the Mexican cartel. So
right.
the message, the politics of Rambo Last Blood are Mexican immigrants are shit. That's the politics of that movie. What what a wasted opportunity Last Blood was, because it should have been, because of the political climate we live in now, it should have been Rambo doing what he did in First Blood, which is take out fucking white supremacist assholes.
Right.
Like if he had made Last Blood about domestic trouble like the first one was versus border trouble, it would have been a huge hit, and it would have been way more entertaining, and it wouldn't have made me mad. I'm sad that like Rambo, I think 4 is at least a way to go out with the franchise that it's at least over the top and crazy.
Yeah.
Last Blood is a direct, I know it got theatrical release, but it's a direct to video movie. It's just wildly disappointing.
Well, they can't all be Rhinestone,
Well, and it's like when a Friday the 13th movie disappoints, Tracy, you know what I mean? It's like, how did you
still do it, man?
fuck this up?
What's the Friday the 13th where Jason's not even in it? It's like the fake Jason paramedic.
5.
Like
5.
6, 5.
No, 5, 6. 6 is when he's finally a zombie.
That's right.
5 is a New Blood, and it's the ambulance driver.
Like it's not even Jason. What are you doing?
But I like that one because it's got so much great white trash stuff in it. I like the white trash.
Tracy, have you guys done Staying Alive or?
Yes.
I gotta go back and re-listen. I don't remember.
Mitch Rouse came and brought Staying Alive with us. And he has the best.
I'm gonna go back and listen.
The best Stallone accent ever, and he did half of it during the show. I was like crying. It was so good.
Because that's another one that's batshit crazy and could not shit on its predecessor more.
And then Stallone gives himself the cameo where they walk down the street and he turns around with his ass, and you're like, what is happening? What is happening that you're doing this in your own movie? It's just like.
But no concept of even what a theatrical show that show's like for. Like I'm watching the Satan's Alley, and I'm like, there's no way that they can replicate this 6 nights a week.
No. Also, I want to say, and I don't know that this is true, but I remember when I saw Showgirls, I was like, are they trying to do Satan's Alley from Staying Alive? Like that Vegas show where she's like in the freaking lava and the volcanoes. I was like, oh my God, I think you're quoting Staying Alive in Showgirls. I'm gonna, it's so good.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting at this point for someone, speaking of right-wing action stars, I want someone to pick Bird on a Wire. Like, why haven't we done Bird on a Wire?
Goldie and Mel. Goldie, 20 years older, super hot, also
God
doing
damn. And also there should be a 4K restoration box set of all of Goldie Hawn's movies.
correct.
Which currently most of them aren't even in proper DVD release.
I cling to my Foul Play DVD from the 90s.
The Foul Play and Seems Like Old Times DVDs, because they're from Warner.
Oh my God, it seems like old times. Boy, girl.
Warner Brothers did their early DVD releases with enhanced for widescreen TVs before anyone had one. Yeah. So God bless Warner Brothers for doing that.
Correct.
Correct. All right. I don't know what we've got going next week, but we should sign off. Max, tell people where they can listen to your podcast.
Oh, the podcast. Yeah. Cinemaxers, we're on Tuesday nights, usually at 8:00. It's live on Talk Radio 1. The next morning, you can find it on Apple Podcast, on iTunes, all that, wherever you get your podcast. A shout out to Jennifer Miller, who puts up with my shenanigans every week, and I don't let her get a word in edgewise. Check us out. And you all, this has been a
thank you, Max. Yeah. It was so lovely having you. Come back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah, please.
Everyone be good.
Come back and pick Bird on a Wire.
Hey, we love John Badham, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Stay safe out there. COVID is taking a lot of my friends, so be careful. And
I got vaxxed the other day. I got double vaxxed. I got the flu and the COVID.
Shot. Good idea. All right, everybody, be good. And thanks again, Max. All right, we'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.